To the draft show with Joe Giglio. Second one I'm doing these draft shows leading up to the first round of the NFL draft. Lot to get into it. I want to make this show tonight, just like last time, if you watched a couple days ago, interactive. So I'll start talking. I'll throw out some topics, some thoughts I have, some takes on the Eagles, the draft, everything leading up to the first round here. And I want your thoughts. I want your opinions. I will read them. I will take questions here. You throw a comment in there, and I will see it, first of all. And then second, if it's something great, something good, something decent, something I can bring to the show, I will comment on it and answer your question. Appreciate you guys watching tonight. So let me start with this, and then I'll look at the questions here and at the comments coming in a few minutes. But I just want to start with the rumor of the day when it comes to the Eagles and the NFL draft, which is that the Philadelphia Eagles could be looking to trade back up from number 12 to somewhere, inside the top 10. And initially it's like, well, why'd they even move out of 6? What's the point? Look, that trade, when they moved out of 6, when the Philadelphia Eagles moved down from 6 to 12, they got a first-round pick next year. That is significant currency to move down 6 spots. So, whatever they do now, as long as they don't give up a first-round pick to go back up, they've won this transaction. They have come out in a better place than they were about a month and a half ago. So, I don't have a problem with the idea of trading back up if they have locked in on a guy and they are afraid or a little weary that, let's say, the Cowboys at 10, Giants 11 might take. But from my perspective, there's not much from where I see it that separates a lot of these players. And we're not talking about quarterbacks here. That's not what's going to fall. That's not what the Eagles are after. We're talking about position players. And I don't see the big gap between a lot of these guys that might fall compared to the next guy on the board. Let's go to corner, right? Patrick Surtain, Alabama. Tremendous prospect. Probably going to be the first corner off the board. If the Eagles don't get him, I really like J.C. Horn, the corner out of South Carolina. I think he'd be just as good of an NFL corner. So am I willing to give up a third-round pick to go and get him? The gap between whatever the Eagles like versus the next best guy at that position that maybe they can get at 12 or something later, I don't think it's good enough to give up a draft pick to go get. So I know they have 20 picks the next 2 years. I am perfectly fine with moving and wheeling and dealing in this draft and getting better spots. I'd move up from 37 to back into the first round. I would rather do that and use an asset that way than a couple spots in the first round, unless there's one exception to this. There's one guy that I love, and he's been my guy since this draft started. He will continue to be. I'm hoping he doesn't land with a division rival. Probably won't. But Kyle Pitts, the tight end, Archbishop Wood. I had his former high school coach on my show a couple months ago, and he's now a local college coach. He's an incredible tight end prospect. I think, and I know people say, well, there's been other guys, Vernon Davis and Kellen Winslow that have been high picks and then have not translated to greatest. I think Kyle Pitts is going to be a superstar in the NFL. And that was the only part of the Eagles trade out of 6 that disappointed me because I thought there was a chance they get Kyle Pitts. Now, he might go 4. I mean, he might go as high as 4. He might be the first non-quarterback to be selected, wherever pick that is. He's that good. So he might end up in there at 6 for the Eagles anyway. They did move off of 6, which I think lost any chance at all of getting him. But I'll say if there's a small chance that Kyle Pitts is there at, let's say, 8 or 9, and the Eagles can use a third-round pick this year, next year, however it works, to go up and get him, I would do that. That's the only guy. Surtain's a really, really good corner prospect, but I like J.C. Horn. Same thing with Smith and Waddle. Am I going to jump up to get one of those guys if the other one's going to fall? I can make the same case for the offensive lineman. If Penei Sewell's going 7 and the Eagles have their eyes on Rashawn Slater, he might just fall to 12. Or if they think they like Sewell and Slater and they want to go O-line, just take the other one that falls to 12. I don't see the big difference between 8 or 9 and 12 in terms of the guys that we're talking about, the kinds of players that are going to be there, the kinds of players that they've kind of been rumored to be after. I don't see it. And I don't think the Eagles should trade up for a wide receiver. I said last time we did one of these shows that I'm against taking a receiver at all in the first round. At least it's as high as they are right now. I don't want to do it. Kyle Pitts, I'd make an exception for because I think he's an unbelievable prospect. So I would do that. Do you want to trade up? Leave the comments here on Facebook, and I'll get them. Would you be in favor of the Eagles trading up from number 12 to get back into the top 10? It's not about the cost. It's not about having draft picks. They have so many. They have capital to do it. I just don't think the players there are so worth it versus just staying at 12 and saving those picks to either use or trade up in other rounds. If it's up to me, and I could trade from 12 to 9 to make sure I get Surtain and it doesn't end up being J.C. Horn. I don't think there's a big enough difference to do it. But I'd rather keep my third-round pick that I could trade in that deal, and instead I'm at 37, and maybe I'm watching the first round play itself out, and at number 26, number 27, there's a wide receiver there that really I think is a first-round player that's kind of falling down the board, probably won't last till 37. Why don't I give the third-round pick there? Like, why don't I use my draft pick capital there, get back into the first round, get an extra year in that player's contract? That's how I'd rather do it. So unless the Eagles have one player, and if they only have one player they love that much, then why they move out of 6? Like, there's a little disconnect there. I don't want to trade up unless it's for Kyle Pitts. I'd stay at 12. I'd take an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, a corner. That's where my head's at with this draft. And if everything goes wrong, you might hate to hear this, but if everything goes wrong and all the guys they like are gone, they got to be willing to trade back again. I 3, 4, 5 spots. Maybe Washington wants to get up for a quarterback, or the Patriots want to get up for a quarterback. They have to be willing to do that. Do you want the Eagles to trade up from 12 back into the top 10? Unless it's Pitts, quite frankly, I just don't think it's worth it. All right, let's check the Facebook comments here. The draft show, we're doing this a couple times each week leading up to the NFL draft in a few weeks, which I can't wait for. Every time we get to this time of the year, I cannot wait for the NFL draft. Like that, it's especially the first round. Second round, third round, night 2 is awesome. But that first round, and this year probably more than ever, because you're going to have so much uncertainty at the number 3 pick. It's like we know it's Lawrence at 1. We know it's Zach Wilson at 2. And then the entire draft it starts at 3. Are the Niners really going Mac Jones? Will it now be Justin Fields? The odds kind of changed there. So here's what I'm going to do. We'll take some comments here, questions on the whole idea of trading up, trading back. And then I want to give my big board. I have a big board where I have 5 players I really love for the Eagles at 12 if they stay there. 5 players at 37 I really love. And I'm going to throw one little wrinkle in. I wrote the big board a couple weeks ago, but I'm gonna make a change on the fly because I've been watching more of some of these receivers, and I've kind of fallen out of love with one guy, and the other guy I like even better now. So we'll get to that. All right, listen. Hey, Joe. Someone wants to know about the Sixers here. Curry shooting threes. Listen, the Sixers are going to be okay. Number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. The Sixers are going to be quite fine, whether Curry's shooting threes or not. Comment about Smith from Alabama, the wide receiver, and how good he can be and what he can be, and a steal at number 12. I mean, he could be. Smith's the kind of guy, his production was off the charts. Heisman Trophy winner, off the charts production for Smith at Alabama. And there's a reason why a lot of teams probably love him, and he's a great route runner. He gets open all the time. He catches everything near him. There is an element when you watch Smith to like, is he this year's Justin Jefferson? Where the Eagles are going to overthink this thing, and it's going to be like, oh my goodness, how could they pass on him? And then he has 110 catches next year. Is there a chance that happens? Yes. I'm not going to pretend there's not a chance. There's a chance that that's the way it goes down, that he has crazy production at every level he's at. But let me say this about Smith. For as good as he is, for as productive as he is and was at Alabama, he's 170 pounds. Can you think of 170-pound wide receivers that consistently won in the NFL? And don't go back to 1965, where the average player was like half the size of the guy now. In the modern NFL, it's rare. It's rare. The wear and tear on your body, those guys get hurt. Those little wiry guys get hurt. I don't know how much Odell Beckham weighs. It's more than 170, the Browns receiver, but it's less than 200. He's always been a smaller wide receiver. And what's been his career? Injury after injury after injury. He's a knucklehead, but he's a tremendous player. But it's injuries. I just don't trust Smith to stay healthy. And when I think about the Eagles' offense, and we don't know exactly what it's going to look like with Nick Sirianni, but with Jalen Hurts as the quarterback, the way I view it, there's going to be a lot of running, a lot of RPOs, a lot of deep passes down the field. That's what Hurts liked to do last year. And then short stuff, like tight end stuff and backside of the backfield, short stuff, and the receivers down the field. That's not Smith. That's more Waddle. Smith's game is over the middle, intermediate, crossing routes, kind of the possession wide receiver in the NFL. And I don't think that fits with Jalen Hurts. I know he played with Jalen Hurts at Alabama, so it's not like they can't play together. But the kind of offense we'll see with the Eagles, with Jalen Hurts, the quarterback, I don't think Smith fits it. So I know the idea would be like, yeah, okay, he'd be a steal for the Eagles at 12 because he's so productive. But I just don't know. So Kyle said Steve Smith is a better Deshaun Jackson. Steve Smith? Like, you mean Steve Smith, the veteran? The guy has been out of the league? Or we're talking about Waddle or Smith in this draft? What do you mean by that, Michael? Michael said, do you take Horn at 12 or do you think taking him at 12 is a reach? I don't think taking him at 12 is a reach. I would take him at 12. In fact, let's play this out for a second. Let's play the draft out just kind of concept-wise. If we are sitting there draft night, and let's say Surtain is off the board, so the consensus top corner, though I think Horn could be just as good or better. Let's say the consensus top corner off the board, and J.C. Horn is on the board at number 12, and it's between Smith, Waddle, Horn. If I'm the Eagles, I guess having an in-person draft this year or something like that in Cleveland, it's different. It's not quite as virtual as last year, but it's not quite like the old school used to be. Whatever the order of operations is, call it in, run it in, sprint to the podium, as they used to say. If J.C. Horn is on the board at 12, I'm running to the podium making the pick. I love that kid. I watched some highlights of him playing against Kyle Pitts, my first love in this draft, the tight end of Florida. He was covering him. Also covering wide receivers at Alabama. Like, he is a legitimate corner. His dad, of course, was Joe Horn, the former wide receiver, so he has that NFL lineage, which same thing for Surtain. I mean, it's interesting. Last year's first-round pick, Jalen Reagor, his dad, Monte Reagor. This year, could be J.C. Horn, his dad, Joe Horn. Surtain, his dad played corner in the NFL. Like, there's a lot of good bloodlines with these Eagles' potential first-round picks. But, yes, Horn, I don't think it's a stretch at all at 12. I'm starting to get a little worried now. He might be off the board before at number 12. TJ said, take the best offensive lineman available. So the offensive line discussion is interesting because you can look at the offensive line thing two different ways. The first way is they're getting some guys back healthy. Right? So right now, you could project the line out as, okay, they've got some bodies back that weren't here last year. Lane Johnson and Brandon Brooks, even Andre Dillard. And plus, they were able to develop some depth behind those guys last year. So I think in total, the offensive line group is way stronger on paper heading into this season than what we saw last year. And that's without making one addition. Like just having Jack Driscoll in the system and playing last year, having Herbig, who I think played pretty well when he was in there. Like those guys are good depth pieces. Of course, though, old guys that get hurt usually keep getting hurt. That's the way it works in pro football. So will Lane Johnson ever be the same again after a collapsed ankle? I don't know. Will Brandon Brooks off of 2 Achilles be the same? I don't know. I know the guy's a physical freak, but I don't know. I mean, could decline start to hit Jason Kelce? It could. I think Sayamalo is probably the surest, simplest thing on the line. Like, yeah, he's a good young player. And then left tackle, I would guess Mailata, but then I still have Dillard. Here's a former first-round pick. I'm not a fan. I don't think he could play, but he's still here. But you look at it, and although offensive line I wouldn't call a pressing need to field a team this fall. Like, they don't need to take an offensive lineman to be okay at line this season. But here's my worry about line and why the comment there about, taking the best offensive lineman available is not crazy. Think about I always think we look at drafts as now. This is what we do as fans. Like, well, they need this. They need this now. But I always think of the draft as like, you make the pick for not just this year, but the next 2 or 3 years. And that's why offensive line wouldn't bother me at all. Like, if Rashawn Slater's the pick at 12, the Northwestern kid, I don't think Sewell's going to be there. But if Slater's the pick, I'm not going to be upset because you could say, with I think pretty decent conviction, that in 2 years, they might need to figure out right tackle, right guard, center. And left tackle could still be uncertain, depending on if Mailata really grabs the job, if Dillard's even a serviceable player or not. So you could have 4 of the 5 positions on the offensive line or players. Like, you might need 4 guys. That's a lot. So I'd be totally fine. Totally fine. Ian said offensive lineman cost the most. Take one now or go defense. Please, logically thinking. I think what Ian said there at the last line, think logically. It's almost like that should be our mantra as fans here for this draft. Like, just screaming at Howie, think logically on this. And that's why offensive lineman, defensive lineman. Edward chimed in, the O-line is where the O starts. Witnessed last year and 2017. Lane Johnson will not be back at former strength. We don't know that, but okay. According to a foot and ankle surgeon he trusts. All right, well, you got to bring sources to the table here. Edward, tackle is an area of need for the Eagles. Now, I don't believe it is a pressing need now, but it could be. Like, it certainly could be. I think the 2 parts of this draft, and both could be their options at 12, that are really interesting because we can't look at them as pressing needs in the moment, but they are long-term needs. One is offensive line. We just laid the whole thing out. Offensive line, they're going to need to kind of do this whole thing over on the fly quickly. So Slater would make sense. The other one is defensive line. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because there's no, star level top 10 surefire first round defensive lineman picks in this draft. But when you look at it and you look at the Eagles pass rush, which just go back to 2017, go back to the year they won the Super Bowl, even the next year when they had Michael Bennett as part of the group too. They won with waves of pass rush. Waves. It wasn't just one or two guys. It was a rotation of defensive linemen. And you think about their line now, and I think it's pretty good, and they have a lot of money invested. I think, Fletcher Cox is still here. We'll see if he's here past this year. Javon Hargrave started off really poorly, getting injured in training camp and preseason and not doing much the first half of the season. He came on at the second half, so I feel good about Hargrave. Defensive end, I like Josh Sweat a lot. Barnett is back on a one-year deal, and you have Brandon Graham. But beyond this year, what do you have as true outside pass rushers? Josh Sweat, free agent. Derek Barnett, free agent. Brandon Graham, getting older. So defensive end is another one of those, kind of like the offensive line, where do you need one today to go play a game? No. But do you need one starting in 2022 to start and play most snaps? You probably do. So I'd be fine. Kwity Paye is the name, I would say, from Michigan. He's probably the highest rated or maybe the most likely defensive end to go off the board. But there's a bunch. It's like there's no top 10 true defensive end prospects. But depending on whose mock draft you look at, who you read, what analysts top 50 list, like there's a group of them where it's Paye or Phillips or Rousseau, a couple edge rushers that could be like 3-4 guys, or true outside or true defensive end. Like they're all there. I mean, they're all there, and maybe we'll go somewhere between 12 and the end of the first round. So there's a lot there. Aniel, I hope I'm saying that right. Aniel Enrique. I'd personally take Waddle because the depth at cornerback in this draft is better than wide receiver, in my opinion. Asante Samuel Jr. is probably going to be there in the second round. After the second round, I'm cool with O-line and D-line. And I understand the depth of each draft has to play into it, but I actually think wide receivers becoming like running back used to be. Remember the way it used to be where, other than a couple of truly star running backs, the idea, at some point people realize, like, hey, why are we taking running backs in the first round? There's so many throughout the draft. And that's the way I view wide receiver now. Every college program, or at least most of them, all they do is throw the ball. So the best athletes, what do they want to do? They want to play wide receiver. High school, they throw the ball. College, they throw the ball. The best athletes play wide receiver, 7-on-7 camps. I think there's more good wide receivers now in every draft than ever before. So I look at receiver the way Aniel said corner. I think corner's tricky, where I don't want to mess around with low-round guys. Like, if you give me a Horn or a Surtain early, boom, I know I got a starter at corner. I'll figure out wide receiver as we go through. So I actually view it the opposite way, where I'd get the receiver later, corner early. But I do like Asante Samuel Jr. It's funny, I was watching him play. He's different than his dad. Asante Samuel was a ball hawk, and he would kind of read the quarterback's eyes and go and break and run for a pick six. But he wasn't a physical corner. His son, Asante Samuel Jr., he's physical. Like, he looks to me like a true slot corner in the NFL. Put his nose in there against the run. It'll cover the guy, kind of press man. It'd be a fun story if Asante Samuel Jr. ended up here. Ryan Harper, Micah Parsons, go get him. Look, I like Micah Parsons. He's an outstanding athlete, had a great career at Penn State, obviously opted out last year. But look, Micah Parsons is a linebacker. The last time the Eagles took a linebacker in the first round, does anyone know who it was? Like, off the top of your head, do you know who it was? If you do, type it in. We'll see who gets it first. The last time the Eagles took a linebacker in the first round. Here's a hint. I wasn't born yet. And don't look it up. Like, I know you're watching. You could easily, on the 6 screens you're on right now, because that's what the world is now, you could easily go on Google and look it up. Don't do that. Just try to guess. Guess in the comment section here on the Facebook Live, the last time the Eagles took a linebacker in the first round, who was it? And my hint is, it's before I was born. And I am not old, but I am certainly not that young anymore. It's been a long, long time. TJ chimed in. No, it wasn't Chuck Bednarik. It's post Chuck Bednarik. Good guess, Nelson. It wasn't Bednarik. Someone wants to know. TJ wants to know. There it is. Don. Jerry Robinson in 1979. Yes, it was Jerry Robinson in 1979. But just think about that for a second. Jerry Robinson in 1979 was the last time the Eagles took a linebacker in the first round. That's a long time. And I just think the MO of this franchise, I know it's a different coaching staff and whatnot, but the MO of this franchise is they don't take linebackers the first round. They don't value the position enough to take linebackers in the first round. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So yes, it's been a tremendously long time since a linebacker was taken. I doubt it happens anytime soon. TJ asked about Jalen Hurts and how long he gets if he struggles. Well, I mean, quite frankly, I think he's going to have a very long leash for 2021. I mean, 2021 is about Jalen Hurts, and I know there's been a lot of back and forth, and it's funny. I find the whole Jalen Hurts conversation to be so interesting because I think timing and when you do what you do and perception changes a lot. Because I believe if Jalen Hurts' first 2 games or his last 2 games versus the way it actually was, we'd be going into the offseason just like losing our minds with excitement. Jalen Hurts was legitimately exciting those first 2 games, and with good reason. I mean, he was putting up ridiculous numbers, moving the ball at a ridiculous pace. Was he perfect? No. Did he have a completion percentage that was a little too low? Yes. Did he fumble the ball too much? Yes. There's flaws, and he's got to get better. But I mean, he gave me enough reason to feel really excited about where he's going. And a couple things about his stats. I know his completion percentage was very poor, and he's got to be way closer and really over 60% to be effective versus the 52 he was last year. But 2 things on that. One, I always look at like batting average in baseball, right? The Phils are going to play tonight, and some of their batting averages are awful. It's only been 2 weeks. They played 12 games. Jalen Hurts played 4 games. So, I can't look at his completion percentage and assume it would have been that bad over 16 games or now 17. And it works the other way, too. If a rookie quarterback plays 3 or 4 games and completes 70% of his passes, is he really that accurate? It's a short sample. So I'm not going to get bent out of shape over a short sample of throws, a lot of throwaways. Offensive line wasn't great. Short sample for a rookie quarterback. I think he's accurate enough and he has touch on his ball enough to be way closer to league average as a completion percentage, and plus the legs and all that. I think that'll be fine. The other part of Jalen Hurts that I think we need to account for, he had the highest yards per completion of any rookie quarterback in the last 13 years. Like, just think about that for a second. Throwing the football down the field. It wasn't like it was dink and dunk with Jalen Hurts. And it's part of the reason why his completion percentage wasn't great, because he was taking shots. I mean, deep pass after deep pass after deep pass. And when I think about that formula, a running quarterback, not great accuracy, but launches the ball deep and has some touch on a deep pass. You know what I think about? I think about Lamar Jackson. That's been the formula with Lamar in Baltimore since they put him in the lineup. And it's just kind of grown, and obviously became an MVP 2 seasons ago. I know Lamar, not everyone thinks he's a great player. Well, you call him what he is. He's a winner. He's 37-9 as a starting quarterback in the NFL. So I believe that Jalen Hurts can win. And I'm excited to watch Jalen Hurts play and be the Eagles quarterback. And he gets all year for me. Like, I'm not benching him next season for Joe Flacco. Now, if he needs a week, he needs a breather, that's fine. But I'm not getting rid of him. Jim said, what can we do to help Lurie understand this team would be better off if he allowed the people he hired to do their job instead of doing it for them? Well, Jim, nothing. I mean, this is the Jeff Lurie show. Here's the one part, and then we'll end this with my big board. 5 guys I like at 12, 5 at 37. The one thing about the Lurie stuff, it's disconcerting. I think he's too involved. I think he's the biggest problem right now. But it's worked before, right? They won a Super Bowl with him meddling. It wasn't like this started yesterday or started post-Super Bowl. It's the way the Eagles like to operate. I think it's the post-Chip Kelly syndrome where they watch the coach take over the organization. They're never going to let it happen again. We only complain if it goes wrong. I don't like the process. They did win a championship this way. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they could figure this out again. Lurie has not had many bad teams here, and not many teams bad, 4 or 5 years in a row. I don't think this is going to be a complete and total dumpster fire for the next 5 years. I think they're going to figure it out. All right, here's my big board. I'll throw these names at you. Comment on them. Give me your guy. Who's your guy at number 12? Who's your guy for the second round? I'll read the comments next time we do this. So here's my 5 guys. 5 guys for 12. 5 guys for number 37. First and second round. My number 1 guy at 12 is J.C. Horn, cornerback, South Carolina. I love him. I just think he's got the right attitude, size, skill, physical to be a star number 1 corner in the NFL. Rashawn Slater, offensive lineman, Northwestern. We've talked about it. We talked about it here tonight. That position is unsettled moving forward. They need to rebuild that offensive line, and I think he could be a tremendous player. He might be a better guard in the NFL, but could end up at tackle as well. Kwity Paye, defensive end, Michigan. He doesn't pop, but it's kind of similar. Maybe it's just the Michigan thing that stands out to me. Kind of similar to Brandon Graham in 2010, where it's like He's not going to win a 40-yard dash contest. He's not going to jump off the page athletically, but he's a good football player against the run and the pass. Kwity Paye out of Michigan is my number 3. Then I put Waddle and Smith at 4 and 5 for the picks at 12. I don't want a wide receiver at 12 or a trade up, but I'm also not going to scream and yell if they get those guys. They're both going to be productive NFL players. If I had to choose, Waddle over Smith. So my 5 for number 12 were Horn, Slater, Paye, Waddle, and Smith. Now, number 37, or trade back up, which they could do in the first round. I'm gonna sub one guy out. I'm gonna sub a new guy in. So the guys I have, Trayvon Moehrig, the safety out of TCU. I wrote this list a couple weeks ago. I've been looking at it. He's not going to last at 37. He might go in the top 20. I mean, I think he's the best safety in this class, a ball hawk. I could see him leading the NFL in interceptions one day. I love him. If he's there, earlier I mentioned, save that third-round pick instead of trading up at 12 to 9. Save it. And if someone is sitting there at 25, 26, 27, still there on the board, I would call and say, hey, you could have 37 and my third-round pick. Can we get up to 28, 29, whatever? I would love that. And Moehrig was my number one guy for that. Now, I had a receiver. I had Kadarius Toney out of Florida. He's out. I took him off my big board. I put Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota, a bigger receiver. I think they could use that on the other side of Jalen Reagor. Javonte Williams, running back out of North Carolina. I love him. I think he's going to be a star running back in the NFL. And if you're going to have a running back field, like let's say the Ravens have had with Lamar Jackson, RPOs, shuffling running backs in and out. I like Miles Sanders. I don't love Miles Sanders. I think we overrate Miles Sanders. They could use another running back if they're going to be a power running team. Javonte Williams would be awesome. Kind of like the Ravens having Mark Ingram, having a bunch of good backs, and they go out last year and draft a running back out of Ohio State in the second round. So you could do it. Javonte Williams at 37. My last couple guys, Asante Samuel Jr., who we talked about, and Ronnie Perkins, defensive end out of Oklahoma. Let me give you this comp here, okay? So player A, 6'2", 265 pounds, 32.5-inch arms, 4.72 40-yard dash. Okay, player B, 6'3", 253 pounds, same arms size, 4.71 40-yard dash. The first guy was Brandon Graham 11 years ago. The second guy is Ronnie Perkins out of Oklahoma. I watch him. I see a young Brandon Graham, a little thinner, maybe not quite as big coming out of school, but the game has changed where defensive ends are lighter to begin with. I think Perkins is going to be a really good defensive end in the NFL. Maybe could be a 3-4 linebacker, kind of like Brandon Graham was for a short period of time with, obviously Chip Kelly as the coach and Billy Davis, the defensive coordinator. I think Ronnie Perkins is going to be a really productive player, and if they go corner or wide receiver or offensive line in the first round, Ronnie Perkins is the last guy on my big board. All right, this was fun. We'll do it again next week a few times leading up to the NFL draft. Thank you for the comments. Do you want to trade up from 12 into the top 10? Let me know. And who's your guy? I'm going to go back and read them tonight. Who's your guy that you want, the number one guy you want for the Eagles to grab in the first round? Joe Giglio with the Draft Show. We'll do this again.